All right. Hey, everybody. How we doing? Hope you
Hello.
all are well. Hey, what was that?
Oh, I'm not supposed to talk
Oh,
yet. Hold on,
bummer.
let
No,
myself be
no, no, you're
introduced.
good. No, you're good. No, I mean, like, nobody can respond to us. Well, someday we'll be back in person, everybody. So thanks for joining us for this session. My name is Todd Stevenson. I am the enrichment and training rep with Disney TVA. I help support the studio inside and outside, and I'm so excited to introduce you to one of our incredible animators at the studio, Kat Kosmala. So Kat has been animating for over 15 years with such credits as Bob's Burgers, Future Worm, DuckTales. She is currently animation supervisor on the yet to be released or aired Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. She is incredibly passionate about the craft of animation, not the medium, the craft, and is an incredibly gifted teacher. She can talk about this stuff for hours and is packing into an hour a plethora of info. And I will turn it over to you, Kat. Thanks again
All
for doing this.
right, all right.
Yeah.
So excited to see you guys. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Um, Everybody see that okay, I hope?
Yeah, you're good.
Excellent, guys. I was looking at that chat. Like, there's people all around the world here. That's so cool. It's so cool that you've come. And I'm excited about the medium too, but also this talk is about the craft. And you get the whole title because the title was too long for Lightbox Expo. So it's movement that means something and why the in-betweens matter. No cutting corners here. You get the whole deal. So yes, my name's Kat. I love animation. I've been doing it professionally for about 15 years. DuckTales, Bob's Burgers are some of the more recent credits. And of course, as Todd mentioned, I'm having a blast on Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur right now. It's going to be a really cool show that I'm very excited for. And I've been blessed to teach a CalArts animation class the past 4 years, which is so cool and so much fun. Really, really enjoy sharing this stuff with people. And I thought I'd begin the talk with just how I got into animation. A lot of people have the story of they were into it from their childhood, like they knew they wanted to be an animator, they knew they wanted something specific. That wasn't my story. In high school, I had a lot of mixed interests. I liked writing, I liked drawing, I liked all kinds of art. I liked theater, I liked acting, I liked music, and it just came to happen that at the end of high school, I thought, well, what's a discipline that sort of combines all these things, and it's animation. It sort of takes in all of these different different skills, and all of them inform how to do a good job with it. And so I thought, well, that's very interesting, and I'd go to school and learn some more about it. And it turns out that, yes, I was very into it once I started actually doing it. I could lose hours and hours doing it. And also, once I got my first sort of pencil test that was behaving the way I wanted it to, that was just a cool moment. And from that moment, I was really hooked on it. I said, this stuff is really cool. I don't just like to watch it, I like to do it. It's really great. And so luckily enough, I got a job right out of school, and I've been doing it ever since. And I love it. So, but this talk today, again, it's about the craft. I want to talk about the craft, not just the medium, not just the shows and things that are being produced in it, but the craft and how to do it. So animation, a film medium employing many different disciplines, often gets mistaken for the craft, which is the execution of a specific set of skills. And so it often follows that generic term animation is always getting praise or shade for things it doesn't deserve. A lot of people say, you know, they like the animation in this show or this movie, or they don't like the animation in this show or this movie. And I say, oh, cool, let's get into a conversation. And somewhere, you know, a couple minutes into that conversation, I'm thinking, oh, it's not the animation you're talking about. You were very intrigued by the design, or you liked the writing, or you liked, you know, something else. It wasn't necessarily the animation. And so, to begin this talk, I thought we'd start with something a little bit better than the generic dictionary definition. In order to appreciate the art without sounding too arbitrary, it helps if we have a heart-to-heart with some specialized vocabulary. Simply learning some terms can fine-tune perception and help out with critical thought, because to admire what animation actually is, we need to define what it's not. I think it's a lot easier to understand what we're talking about when we define what isn't animation. So what isn't animation? Animation is not great production design. Something that comes to mind, or a great show that comes to mind when I think about great production design, is Samurai Jack. Hopefully everyone in this chat has seen it. I know you all are animation nerds, so probably the answer is yes. Some of the most beautiful art direction ever. But the credit for why that's so cool really ought to go to the designers, the background layout artists, and the art director. It's not necessarily the movement that's really great about that production. Animation also isn't great shot selection or pacing. An example that has great shot selection and pacing that comes to mind is pretty much any Miyazaki movie. They're wonderful, wonderful movies. But the reason I get so sucked into them is directing and pacing. It's a comfortable movie. You can just kind of sort of settle into it. And the thing that's really transportive about it is that sort of storytelling. So when we're talking about shot selection and pacing, credit doesn't necessarily go to the animation, even though it may be in an animated format. Give credit to your director, give credit to your editor, your writers, and your board artists too. Another thing that isn't animation, the craft, is complexity of action and fight sequences. These are also cool things. I think of the original Clone Wars, Genndy Tartakovsky's. I think of Avatar: The Last Airbender, some amazing action and fight sequences in that show. But really give credit to the board artists. They figured it all out, they boarded it all out. I know in many cases reference was also used, but that's, you know, doing the reference and doing the research. It's not necessarily the movement itself or the timing and spacing. Animation isn't necessarily complicated or detailed drawings with lots of rim lighting. So I'm looking at pretty much most animes. And again, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Great show, but a lot of times people are taken by, oh, those drawings are so detailed, they're so complex, they're so technically rich. And this may be true, but then we're talking about individual drawings, not necessarily the animation and their movement. And finally, it's not just having enough drawings to create smooth movement. So it's not just in-betweening and in-betweening and in-betweening and in-betweening until you're finally on ones at 60 frames per second, which should be nobody's goal. Smooth movement is not the goal. Believable movement, interesting movement is the goal. And so I'll ask you to think back with early animation. An example I like to bring up is Winsor McCay's 1911 Little Nemo. I should give a content warning with that too. If you look it up, you might see some caricatures that would not be PC today, right? So if it's not your thing, take care. But the movement, it's exploring animation very early on. The draftsmanship is wonderful. The drawings are technically super solid, and it moves and turns. It turns beautifully, but the movement, it doesn't have weight. There's not a lot of lifelikeness to it yet, and that's because of something I'll talk about a little bit later in this talk. So just to be clear too, all of the examples I listed above, I really love. They're really wonderful examples. I'm not hating on any of them. And in fact, I'm purposefully picking examples of productions that I like, despite the fact that the animation itself isn't really what makes them special. Again, Samurai Jack has some of the incredible pacing and some of the most beautiful, perfectly composed backgrounds ever painted for the medium. Avatar has some truly creative and inventive boarded sequences. Those fights are amazing to watch. And the progression and the ideas that the creativity that they've injected them is truly incredible. Winsor McCay's piece, of course, is innovative and amazing and had to be done for its time. And of course, there's nothing cozier than a Studio Ghibli movie. The distinction I'm making here is that the reason I love those things isn't necessarily for the movement or the animation, because I want to get in and talk more about that now. I love them. It's absolutely okay for you to love them too, because there's great reasons. Again, it's not the animation that makes me love them. So let's talk, what is animation? So timing and spacing are really at the heart of it. Timing and spacing are linked concepts, and they are at the heart of every creative decision in animation. And when we talk about animation, we are talking about movement, and not just movement, but performance. So included in that would be acting and choices about timing and spacing that inform acting or speed or performance, the way something moves. So discoveries about timing and spacing are how the art form evolved from the most basic representations of motion to movement that could be more nuanced and expressive. And I know you all know this, so call it out in the chat or just, yell it out, whatever. Over here on this left, we've got an example of it's even timing, right? And over on the right, this one shows slow in, slow out. You might call it ease in and ease out depending on when you learned or if you only learned through software, and that's okay because the terms don't matter. It's the concepts that matter. And yes, I'm sneaking in some other principles here too. But for me, slow in and slow out is a category. It's a subcategory of timing and spacing. It's really baked into how I think about what spacing should be. And it's a big opportunity for being creative with how fast or how slow, how light or how weighty the action will feel. Once we found this concept, once this was discovered and understood, slow in, slow out, suddenly things weren't just in between from key to key evenly. Suddenly there were choices. And once we have these new concepts like slow in and slow out, a whole new range of choices appeared. So momentum loss and gain could be made more extreme, like in this example above, or it can be more subtle, like this example below. The main thing and the really cool thing is that slow in, slow out isn't just an on-off, there or not there concept. It's something we can exaggerate or understate and apply in degrees. And that means that it's not just a concept that is in your animation or isn't in your animation. It's something that you can be expressive with. It's something that you can make choices with. And now we have art instead of just filling in the in-betweens. So here's another thing. Every animator's favorite thing is a bunch of bouncing balls. If you ever get in my class, you're going to be doing bouncing balls because it's just one of the greatest tests. It's so easy and simple to do. And yet we can explore lots of different things with it. So I'm going to play this clip, and I'll play it twice just in case anybody's connection is slow or having trouble keeping up. But the big takeaway here is by understanding how these choices affect perception, animators can give very different attitudes to the exact same action and design. So again, same action, same design for all of these, but we can have a different feeling for each of these tests. So here we have some speedy bouncing, something a little bit more natural, something very slow and almost weightless, moon gravity, and something with more cartoony physics, so it's a little bit more expressive. And of course, these are not the only four that can be done. You can do endless variety with just a very simple test, and I think it's a great way to explore timing and spacing and learn it better and experiment with it. So an excellent test. All right, moving on. So homework. I don't care if you're not in my class, but I'm going to give you some homework anyway. I want you to watch Michael Dudok-DeWitt's The Aroma of Tea. If you haven't seen it already, write it down, check it out. This short is amazing. And what I love about it, and what I love about introducing people to it, is it's a pure and simple exploration of timing and spacing set to music. There's, composition and other, film components as well. But there's not a lot of design change in the main subject matter. There's not a lot of cartoony physics or anything, very advanced applied to it. It's really just pure timing and spacing. And the effect it has is really profound. It's actually very dramatic for being so simple. And it's a great exploration of paths of action as well. So when you watch this short, I hope you'll watch it later, or I hope you watch it again later. Watch for paths of action that you can anticipate and expect, and watch for ones that surprise you. It's a really great way to spend 3.5 minutes. So another thing I want to talk about in regards to most fundamental concepts regarding what is animation, what's at the heart of it, is respecting material. So there's many more animation principles that exist, too many to include 1 hour, and if you're a geek, you're probably going to yell out 12 right now. There's 12. But really, a lot of them fall under the concept umbrella of respecting material. So that's not something you'll find in a book or anything, but it's a concept I like to use to describe a couple of the principles altogether. So respecting material means showing how much an object weighs and what type of material it's made of, primarily through movement. So not relying on design alone to convey the ideas of what it weighs and what type of material it's made of. After all, is this a drawing of a marble or is it a soap bubble? Is this a drawing of a brick or is it a sponge or block of cheese? And the answer, it's both or it's neither. It really depends on the movement. And a good animator, once they start, animating, can treat these same designs without changing the design, but just through clever application of timing, spacing, and swash and stretch, can make you believe it's either. So it just proves that individual drawings can often be interpreted in different ways. But with animation, we get the whole story. And whatever you think about how this is colored or what the highlights are or anything, again, if we see it move in a different way, that's going to say more about what material this is made of than anything else. Here's another example. Design does not equal material. So this ball's design doesn't change one bit, but as you notice, our understanding of what it's made of does when it suddenly turns to be from a rubber bouncy ball to a much denser, heavier bowling ball without design change. Another here, these rabbit ears might look like the same design in a held pose, but the animation reveals that they're not. And there's nothing that's changed about the design here. Everything is all in the movement and the in-betweens we're choosing to use. So size comps aren't what makes something big, really. Color palettes and lighting effects aren't what makes something rubbery or silky or metallic. In the end, how objects move, their spacing, the amount of flexibility or rigidity, the amount of squash and stretch always tells us more. And we're more likely to believe the movement than the palette or the size comp, though you really should still get your palettes and size comps right as well. And it's the treatment of this timing and spacing and amount of shape change that we take our cues from, not the individual drawings. So once we get past those basic concepts, animation isn't movement by accident, it's movement by design, and that means we can always make choices that are both interesting and clear. So as we become familiar with all the essential concepts of the craft, that's the 12 principles you've probably heard of or already studied, the conversation can shift away from what the tools are and how they work to when and why to use them. So over at the left is a graphic of how I might classify use of slow in and slow out versus antics versus overshoots. We can give them different rules. They've got different strengths and weaknesses. And it's not that one is inherently better or worse than the other. And it's not also that they have to have these applications. You might decide you have your own rules about when to use antics versus when to use overshoot versus when to use slow and slow out. The real difference is thinking about it and knowing that you have them as tools for creating variation in a scene. They are expressive tools, and they are also not just on-off concepts. You can apply them in different degrees, and that's part of what makes them creative tools and not just technical ones. And once we're familiar with the tools and when and how to use them, it's time to start thinking about getting more complicated. So I know I've been showing you a bunch of boring pictures up to this point, very simple graphics, so hopefully this just, redeems me here. The language of animation applies equally to both the simple and the complex. So after we get past the very basic principles, how does timing and spacing work? How does squash and stretch work? How do we think about all these different concepts? We can start taking that fundamental knowledge and putting it into play in much more difficult actions and with much more difficult or detailed characters. Character animation may be a lot more challenging and time-consuming than animating a bouncing ball, but really there's no level of difficulty that changes the basic rules of the game. It's the exact same principles, just applied to something that's much more difficult. And by the way, this scene was so much fun to do. I loved every minute of it. It was great. I was sad when it was over, but happy to share it with you now. So the rules never change, but sometimes the game does. And in this case, the game is the style of the show. So you can pair natural movement with graphic shakes. You can have cartoony action with dimension, right? No amount of creativity can change how the spacing of drawings and human perception actually work, but we can get creative with how we use or don't use the basic principles in a production. These are spectrums of possibilities, right? So there's natural and lifelike here, and I would say the opposite of that is cartoony or stylized animation. There's dimensional movement, and its opposite is graphic shapes. There's simple movement versus complicated movement. There's broad or exaggerated movement versus subtle or nuanced movement. And what's really cool about these is they are not on-off choices either. You can fall in the middle of the spectrum, or you can say it's mostly natural with moments of cartoony stylized, or it's a mix of dimensional movement with moments of graphic shapes. Or it's just sitting in, mostly complicated action with bouts of simple. The other thing is you can mix and match these. So this column on the right, doesn't have to correlate. You can have, again, simple cartoony, or you can have natural lifelike animation that also uses graphic shapes. You can mix and match these. And there's also more things. You can make up your own spectrum of what these qualities are. These are the things I consider when I'm trying to understand or develop a show style of animation. But they are the elements of style, right? They're understanding, where does this production, this short, this TV series, or this whatever fall on the spectrum? And that helps to define what the movement style will be. So by leaning into or away from opposing extremes, we can have a whole world of different styles. And defining the ranges and norms of movement is the essence of style. This is what separates high quality animation from projects that just fill in the gaps between the keys. And this is essential. This is what I'm driving at, I think, with the whole talk, is animation, good animation has style. It's not just done, it's not just enough drawings to create smooth movement. It has a specific style that it's trying to achieve, and its quality will be determined by how successful it is at achieving that style. So, what are some animated pieces you do like? For the animation, of course. Some things that come to mind that have definite style. Certainly, I love all the classic Disney movies. Jungle Book, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, Sword in the Stone, some of my favorites. And there's the new revival Disney movies that are wonderful too. So, Lion King, The Great Mouse Detective a little bit earlier. These are wonderful. I want to compare two different Disney movies to you. A lot of people have a real soft spot for Emperor's New Groove, which is amazing. It has a very distinct style, and yet it managed to be a Disney movie too. But its movement style is very different from Jungle Book. Its timing and spacing is very snappy, and it's very high energy, lots of squash and stretch and distortion in that production. And it stands out. It's unique in that regard. And that's interesting and wonderful. Director of that, Mark Dindal, also did Cats Don't Dance, which has a similar, very high energy style. Very inspiring to watch, because you can tell everyone animating on it just had so much fun. It's a really, really cool little film to watch. Other things, of course, Iron Giant and Wolfwalkers recently, they have their own design style, but their movement style also feels well matched to the design and form. Cuphead came out a little while ago now, but they were going for something very specific, and they nailed it. So cool to see, so impressive, and just spot on nailed the movement from that era. And another one fairly recently that I was really impressed by was Primal, which had excellent animation. It was limited in the sense that a lot of held poses were used, but man, when things moved, it moved very well, and really a gorgeous watch. And also, I'm going on too long about cool animation. I could do that for too long and it would get boring. And there's also really cool things I haven't named, so sorry if I haven't named it, but there's a lot of examples of stuff, productions, either film or TV shows, or even smaller series and shorts, that really have interesting style when it comes to animation. Again, not just getting it done, but they've decided on a style and they've achieved it. And that's what gets me excited when I watch something for the animation. So keys are important, but they aren't everything. There isn't just right animation and wrong animation, because there are many different ways to animate the same thing. An analogy I like to use is, if you go to point A to point B, that's, point A is your first key, point B is your next key. There's many different ways to do it. And it's not just in terms of path of action, but in terms of how long you take to get there, the timing, what drawings you'll use to get there, the spacing, all sorts of things. And because there are an infinite number of points on each of these possible paths, it's difficult. And a good animator knows exactly which drawings are needed to make the action believable, interesting, and clear, all while staying in show style. These paths, or these ways you get from point A to point B, there are ones that become right or wrong depending on how you define your show style. And also, if we allow that there isn't, necessarily right or wrong in terms of style, we can kind of pick what's right for the show. There still is good and bad, high quality and low quality, skillful and rudimentary. So some of this comes down to a matter of personal taste. Some particular aesthetics might just resonate with you, and the analogy is, you like what you like, and that's always okay. Always okay for you to like what you like. But the problem is, if we throw our hands in the air and say, well, there's no use talking about quality because it's all equally subjective, then what we're essentially saying is none of these choices matter or mean anything. And I take issue with that because I'm very much of the opinion that actually they do matter. These choices matter a lot. And we know art direction matters because we spend a lot of time trying to find and hire the best artists for world building. We know story matters because we spend a lot of time trying to find and hire the best writers and board artists so that the plot and themes and characters are ones we want to watch and follow. Somewhere in the back of our minds, we know animation matters too, but we're a whole lot less confident, or at least most people are a whole lot less confident about making any positive statements about exactly what makes the animation, again, the movement, good or bad. And so I'm here today to try and change that and say, yes, we can have real standards and criteria. So while animation terms and knowledge may be hard to come by in the sphere of public consciousness, we can still evaluate it in the same way we might gauge the success of any artistic discipline. And we don't have to dogmatically favor or throw out our favorite styles either. Any animation style is good and valid if it supports the pacing and tone of the story. It has to feel a good fit for your story. So, for example, if you've got a really fast-paced, high-energy story, you're going to want an animation timing style that can be fast-paced as well and communicate action well. Whereas if you have a slow story, of course, you'll want something that fits that. Any animation style is good and valid if it harmonizes well with the visual designs. So if you've got very dimensional designs, your animation style will probably want a lot of form turning. You'll probably want more complicated arcs or more complicated movements to show off how things can turn dimensionally. Whereas if you have a design style that's very flat and graphic, you might, it's not that you can't turn those as well, but you might lean into the graphic nature of it and explore what you can do with thinking in 2D planes and animating with less depth or fewer turns, or very, very unusual solves for how you turn those characters. Any animation style is good and valid if it helps us feel how we are supposed to feel about the characters in the world. So again, if you've got the kind of story that is light and bubbly and happy, you want an animation style that maybe feels light and bubbly and happy too. Whereas if you're doing something in horror, because we could have an animated horror story, we don't in America because, you know, people unfortunately think a lot of animation is just for kids. They're wrong. It's not. It's for us too. But if you were to do an animated horror, you would want a timing style that will help sell that feeling and that dread and make it work for you. And finally, any animation style is good and valid if it is thoughtful and purposeful about how it handles its in-betweens. And this is the biggest, most important point. It's just not filling in those gaps between keys halfway and halfway and halfway and halfway. The biggest difference between animation that has style, that I would say has virtuosity, is that you're still thinking about the in-betweens. They still matter. You're thinking deeply about spacing and weight and material and how all these things interrelate and create the performance you're after. You're not just doing the work of filling in the in-betweens, which unfortunately happens a lot in very fast-paced production. But being slow and thoughtful is the way to go. Caring about the in-betweens is the way to go. And now at the end too, in short, are we being intelligent about the stylistic choices we're making and why? I want to add to this too. There's an elephant in the room. All the above are criteria we can use to evaluate the quality of animation, in addition to the authenticity of the performance. That matters as well, because animation at its heart is character performance.
Kat? Did Kat freeze? Or is that just me? Okay, it does look like she froze.
Yeah, I got the same time.
Okay.
Reads in a way that is believable.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, did I cut out?
I think cut out for a second, about
Oh,
10 seconds
dear.
there. Hey,
Oh,
real quick
no.
too, are you hearing a noise on your end? Like a notification?
Yes.
Let me see.
I just got the memo. My internet connection is unstable, so fun times, guys.
I think
Fun
we're good.
times.
I think we sorted out the noise as well. I think that we won't hear notifications. So
Okay.
we're good. You're back.
Hey,
Go
I
ahead.
didn't know I was gone.
Yeah, no worries. Go back like 10, 15 seconds.
Okay, what was let's see. Oh boy, guys. It all feels important, so I'm not sure. um, acting matters. Acting matters. Because the performance matters. And really, oh, I've lost my train of thought, you guys. Hold on. We're going back and we're gonna do it right. Okay, so lay people, even lay people, not you guys, just you guys, but everybody understands when they're seeing a performance that resonates. Comedy that falls flat has, it's very different from comedy that works and actually makes you laugh, and that can all be in the timing and spacing. And also a dramatic scene is very different when it's played well, when it feels authentic and when you emote with a character, versus when it's maybe not authentic, or maybe it's difficult to understand what that character is thinking or feeling or what they want in that moment. That makes a huge difference to the performance. And so again, it's about being thoughtful with our in-betweens, not just our keys. It's a huge part of what makes performance genuine. And it's a big, that's the difference between a performance that is captivating and one that's just robotic and stiff. You'll see a lot of robotic, stiff performances in primetime animation, not thinking about the spacing or the in-betweens again. The virtuosity is in the detail, comes from caring very much about how we get from point A to point B. And hopefully I'm back with you guys. I don't want to drop out again because I think we've got some more interesting footage coming up. So
Yeah,
if animation,
you're doing great.
great. If animation is a discipline that adds real quality to a show, and it isn't just a mindless fill in the blanks kind of process, then why don't we talk about this aspect of production more often than we do? It might be different in feature. I bet you guys have a lot of time to work it out, and you're already very thoughtful, and it shows in the end product. I know, like I watched Klaus. Oh my God, amazing, incredible, mind-blowing work. But in TV, we're on a much faster deadline, and it just falls by the wayside too often. And I really wish we would talk more about it. And when we do, we get good results. I'm gonna show you some videos now. This is gonna be more interesting videos. We got more pictures. Don't worry, we got pictures in this presentation too. So a perfectly good animatic doesn't guarantee you'll get the animation you were hoping for. So I'm gonna show you a take one from DuckTales on the left. This is take one. And I want to clarify, the animatic was fine. The animatic got the idea across just right of, what the action was and what the framing was and what the camera was doing and all that. There were some notes sent there, but it wasn't enough information for it to come back from overseas the way that the director and the showrunner had pictured this scene. And this is not, overseas fault. There were a lot of people, I want to clarify, that a lot of people worked hard on this, and a lot of man hours were put into creating this. So it's just an example that the animatic can be fine, but it might not be interpreted the way you think it will be. So I'm going to play this opening clip here. And there's no audio, so don't worry.
Hey! Go!
So that captured everything that was in the boards. It executed that, but it was missing a sort of cinematic quality that the director and the showrunner and pretty much everyone on our team was after. And so there was a question of what to do, what to do to fix it, because it seemed like an overwhelming thing to say, well, just make it more cinematic, or make it more this, or make it more that. You can't necessarily do it with just written notes. So luckily, I was brought in and I got assigned this scene. And I was told, go nuts and make this very cinematic, make it an interesting opening. So I went in and I provided these roughs.
Hey! Go!
and that was sort of my pass of how we were going to revise the opening sequence. And so if I move on to this slide here, I'll play them for you side by side now, because I think that really helps make it clear.
Hey! Go!
So big difference in those two clips, but we did get in the end the opening that everybody wanted, which is excellent whenever we can make that happen. But I want to be clear, the results at Write could have never been achieved with written notes. There is no amount of note giving or paragraphs or volumes we could write to turn the one on the left into the one on the right, because there's too many different ways to think about or interpret it. Really, drawings, animation itself is what communicates the change and what needs to be done. So also, I want to clarify that this particular overall wasn't just about fixing one scene. This was about redefining the animation style and raising the quality of the whole show, because not enough conversations had happened before that point to really make it clear what we were going for stylistically with that show. Again, I got brought in late after the fact, but we did this Drover, we did a whole bunch of others, did a lot of new scenes and new animation for scenes and revisions to scenes and final color retakes and all sorts of things. And through those and through sending those, we began a conversation of, this is what the DuckTales style is supposed to look like. This is what can happen in the show and this is what can't. This is the animation that passes and this is the animation that gets a draw-over, and here's why. And one thing that started happening after we started sending these examples is the quality and the style of the animation started changing. So overseas animators saw the work and became more confident and clear about what was expected. And they began taking liberties too, which, speaking as an animator, is one of the most fun things you can do. And they were producing amazing work. So happy with where we got to by the end of the show. One I remember in particular, I'd done a scene of Magica, and I know that the animation was being looked at very carefully, frame by frame, because when we went over to visit them, we had a whole firstly, we had a whole conversation geeking out about Glenn Keane and other animators and stuff we liked, which is so cool. They love it. But we had a conversation about this Magica scene, and I know they were watching it frame by frame because we talked about this one smear drawing that I did. It was on, for one frame, it's hard to see if you watch the scene, but if you stop, you'll see it. And it was a really great conversation because I said, I didn't know we could do that on this show. And you say, yes, no, it's great, let's do it. And it opened up new possibilities. And it just gave everybody a lot more confidence about what the goalposts were, what we were trying to achieve with the animation style. Plus, it was just downright fun. And also, one thing I really don't want to do is I don't want to make it sound like these tests are completely 100% responsible for the animation style changing, because really they also, they brought it themselves. They're skilled animators and they interpreted it well, and they brought what they had to the table. Because I think the only way to really get better at animation is just to do more and more of it. So if you do good work, then it's because you know how to produce good work, not because anybody else told you to just do it good, which is it's a very easy thing to ask. It's very difficult to do. But these tests were the start of a successful conversation, a way to show visually what could and could not be done in the show. And again, by season 3, the baseline quality of the animation that was being produced was really, truly impressive. I saw people having fun with those scenes, and it made me really happy. Some really, really great work by many talented animators on this show. So communication is key. It turns out having a meaningful conversation about animation style with the people who are actually going to animate the show can make a pretty big difference, actually. A meaningful conversation develops and defines a timing style or styles for the show and helps develop its main characters, who might have unique timing styles too. One of the things I love to see in animation is not just a unique style for a production, but unique styles for characters. A classic example would be Winnie the Pooh versus Tigger. or Eeyore versus Tigger. Tigger is, very bouncy and big and broad and exaggerated and fun. And Winnie the Pooh and or Eeyore are both very understated. They don't have nearly as much energy in their animation, and it creates this really beautiful contrast between them, these different timing styles. It helps define their character. It helps show who they are, which is just really, really cool. We try to have the same sensibility on the early seasons of Bob too. We'd always animate Louise and Jean with the most energy. Then Linda and Bob, would have varying degrees of manic energy versus, natural action. And then Tina, almost none at all, just like as deadpan as you could do it. And that I think was interesting too, because they're, that defined timing styles for different characters. A meaningful conversation also explores how all the principles work in concert with the show's design style. So how much squash and stretch is normal? How big are the antics and overshoots? How quickly does follow through settle? These are things that you can't get from the boards. Your boards can be really excellent and really tight. Your animatics can be perfect, but it doesn't always answer the question of how much squash and stretch, how big or broad should the antics and overshoots be? And again, how long will that settle take? All of that is determined, in the animation and hopefully in examples that really define what's okay and what's not okay for the style. A meaningful conversation tackles unique problems with a production-friendly solution before retakes become an issue. I love, solving problems early on and working those out with people so that we don't have problems later down the line, because later down the line, it always costs more, it takes longer, and it's a lot less fun because you're stressed and the deadline's coming up. And no, solving problems early is always the right way to do it. And finally, a meaningful conversation isn't just a conversation. The best communication tool for establishing a bona fide style is actual animation. So conversations are good. They're definitely better than nothing, but they're not enough. I think to really help define an animation style and get it right from the get-go, you have to produce animation tests. You have to get characters in situations. You have to do a few, walk cycles or scenes, acting bits, figure out some effects work, figure out some action scenes, and really explore it and say, okay, this is what works. And we've also explored some things that didn't work, and we know why they don't. That's all part of developing a style. Also, I just gotta say, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is doing some pretty cool things, some pretty darn cool and innovative things with timing and style. I cannot talk too much about it. I cannot show a slide or an image about it, but it is very cool. I promise you that. And it's because we've been looking at the show's needs holistically. It's a show that has a lot of high energy sequences, and it also has some moments that get slow, that have a more grounded sensibility to them. And so we've been looking at different timing styles to use with different moments that will pair well for those. And we've got different timing styles for comedy versus action versus, that heartfelt, grounded drama. And it's really cool to see the variety that's coming from that. It's very much like visual jazz, and it's very, very cool to also be brought in on a production early enough where we can have these conversations where it's not just about fixing things that are problems because the conversations weren't had before. This is about defining it from the get-go, and those take ones are looking rad. I am also not allowed to mention the animation studio, but there might be some people in this chat today who are there. And if you are, guys, this is my shout out to you. You're doing an amazing job. It's looking so cool, and I'm so happy to be working with you. I'm amazed and I'm humbled by everything you're doing. It's really, really, really cool. Animation can have style. Let's talk about it. Good talk. What was the point of all this? All right, here's your recap. Animation is its own distinct craft and discipline. So animation isn't just a format or a content or a medium. There are unique skills that need to be learned to understand and do it well. Not just anybody can do this. Or I could say, let me revise that. Anybody can do this, but you have to put in the time and you have to put in the effort. And if you haven't done that yet, then it's going to take some time and effort to really digest those skills and get competent with how to use them. Animation is a creative process. It's full of opportunities for showing the same basic action unfold in myriad different ways. So if you give the same boards to 10 different animators, you will get 10 different scenes. Boards are a roadmap, but they aren't a perfect blueprint or guarantee about what that scene will look like. And if you care about quality and consistency of what you get back, you're going to be needing more than good boards. You want to make sure that animation conversation happens, because again, it is a creative process. It is not just filling in the in-betweens or in the spots in between those keys or the spots in between the drawings in your animatic. It's creative. And also, if it is filling in those spots just halfway, you're not getting good animation. That's not good. If you want the good stuff, if you want quality, if you want people to be wowed by the performance and how it moves, then you must treat it like a creative process. You must understand and recognize that there are choices involved, and you should have a conversation about what choices support the style versus what choices are out of show style. Animation can have a mature stylistic language with rules that imbue the acting and action with new subtext and meaning. So stylistic choices, they don't have to be arbitrary. Developing a language works best when we can imagine rules for when and why to apply certain styles so that they really do mean something. And finally, good quality animation, in other words, movement that means something, adds real authenticity and value to the characters and the show. So audiences, and you may know this, like if your friends and family, your friends from high school, your family, your people in your circle who are not in animation, right? They may not know the words, and they may not be able to articulate why the animation is good or bad, but they do react, and they do have an experience, and all people know when something stands out and feels special. And if we're going to make quality content that will hold up when the generation we're making it for wants to show it to their kids, we need to be proud and invested in every part of the process, including the part we got too used to just sending out to other studios to problem solve. Not that, it can't be problem solved, but that it needs to be a collaborative process. It shouldn't just be shoved off and said, well, you deal with it. It should be valued and thought about and discussed, because that's, again, where we get value in the production versus where we just say, well, it's a completed animated show, and yeah, you could sit down and watch it, but is it really quality? So directors, showrunners, potential future directors and showrunners, I am talking to you now. Ask for an in-house animator on your show. It doesn't have to be me. I'm booked for a pretty solid long time right now, but get somebody that you know, that you trust, who can do the job. Get it into the budget, and get someone who can fill that role and make it happen, because you don't want to just get your show made. You want to make it look amazing. And then for everyone else in this room, whether or not you want to be an animator, I hope you found something useful or new or interesting to appreciate about the craft from this talk. It's an exciting medium that I do really, really love. And it's really hard to talk about it for just 1 hour. We're already coming close, and hopefully I'm leaving enough time for Q&A here. But I'm really glad to have a chance to share it with you today. I really, really am so lucky that I fell into it many years ago, that I discovered that I love it, because it is a process that takes patience, and it takes time, and it takes dedication, and it's difficult. It's still difficult. I've been doing it for a number of years, and it's still tricky every time, but I think that's part of why I love it. I really like the challenge of it. And yeah, it's just really important to me, and I'm so happy to share it with you. And I am so lucky that I fell into it and discovered that, yeah, I really, really do love doing it. Finally, this, I get nervous every time before I do a talk, but especially I get nervous before I do professional talks. So Lightbox, oh my God, that's crazy. It's crazy because I know I'm not the best animator here by far, by a lot, right? Because there's some really, really talented animators out there, and there's probably some really, really talented animators in this chat, in this talk right now. So no, I respect your work. I've just convinced myself that you don't have to be the best in the world to have a perspective worth sharing. And so that's what gets me up in the morning. I hope you enjoyed the talk, really. It's my joy and my privilege to geek out about animation with you today. And that's it.
Kat, you're the best. You're too humble. You can stop sharing screen.
I'll stop sharing
There you
screen.
go.
All right, yeah.
Perfect.
I can see people now, or I can see some people.
You can see some people. Nice.
A friendly face.
Yes, you're not just talking to the void. No,
Oh my gosh.
the chat's giving you a lot of love right now. Let's
Oh,
try to
thank
get to
you,
a few
chat.
questions. We
Thank
do
you,
have like
chat.
5-6 minutes. Yeah, chat.
Okay.
Thanks, chat.
Thank you, chat. That's all
Um,
of you. Except the
from
ones who aren't chatting. No thanks
yeah,
to you. Get in there.
yeah, get in there. Get
Okay.
those questions out. All right. Mary asked,
Well, thank you
this,
to you guys too.
I thought this was a good one. How can I learn acting in animation and acting in character design? What kind of resources or references should I use? Should I go to theater?
Yeah, you should go to theater because it's fun regardless. I don't care. Go to theater. Go to theater. Do that, please.
Yeah.
Acting, you should be watching a lot of animation. You should be watching a lot of film. You should be watching pretty much anything and just noting what moves you. When something resonates with you, then go back and break it down and look at it again and say, well, why did that work for me? Why did that, make me tear up, or why did that make me laugh, or why was that so entertaining? Go back and try and understand it. With animation, a lot of it does go back to like studying vaudeville, because we are dealing with laying stuff out on a 2D plane, and it's not strictly 2D. We're thinking about how to use space and how to use the z-axis as well, of course. But a lot of it boils down to what is interesting to watch. And because you're creating the drawings, you're sort of you're seeing the performance through a different place. Like, you're not seeing it through your own eyes the way you would as an actor. You are creating it on the screen, so you are watching it constantly, and evaluating it. You're living that scene in slow motion for a day, 2 days, a week, or however long it takes. You got to lay out a foundation that is really interesting to you and that feels really right. And I would say, if you're trying to get good at acting with animation, don't go with your first instincts. Like, get them down and get them out, but then keep going. Don't stop there. Keep going and keep exploring new poses and new angles and new nuances until you get something that you're really happy with. Because once you have laid that out, and you're in the process of in-betweening and tying down and all that, it's a long haul. So you better love it, and you better be certain that you love it by that point. Because if you haven't spent enough time exploring it and really understanding what you're doing, it's going to be tedium. But if you have really thought well, and it's the best plan you can possibly do, then it's joy. So think really hard about it before you get into a scene.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. From Ray, how do I keep anatomy in mind while I animate and stay consistent?
I don't know. It's the hardest part for me.
Good question.
I don't think it's easy. I think it's just, maybe it's easy for some people. I think it depends on like what you're more comfortable with. For me, the part of the craft that I'm most comfortable with, that I feel really, really at home with, is movement and arcs, and sort of capturing the idea of the performance. And getting the anatomy right, I think it's just time and skill. And I still see places where I fail, or where I need, construction. I'm seeing that in the chat. Yeah, you saying that, actually, I'm glad you put that out. Having a good shorthand for how to draw your character is good. Being familiar with that is really great, because you need a shorthand. You can't just start with putting in all the details and getting really complicated drawings right out the gate. You want to start simple and get the performance right first. I think it's a lot of it is just mileage and keeping at it, and also asking for other people's opinions. Like, I'm very fortunate that, like, all my working history too, I've been surrounded by people who can draw way better than I can, and that's really great. That's really great, because when I show them stuff and they point stuff out, I've been learning constantly for the last however many years. And so if you've got people like that in your life, seek them out and use them, and then buy them lunch. And that's, I guess, what I do. But know that mileage makes it easier, but I don't know that it ever gets easy.
It's a common theme, is to get feedback and to like be open to those relationships. That's been a common theme.
It's a really
today
good
in some
thing.
of our talks. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, don't be afraid to get feedback. It's really great.
This is a bit of a tough one, and I know you're passionate about this. If you're a student learning 3D animation, is there really a place for you to make a living on that job? It sounds like all the work gets outsourced to overseas companies because it's cheap.
Boy, you're not wrong. It's really rough. I don't know. And also, I'm sorry, was the question 3D animation or 2D animation?
They said specifically 3D, but I feel like you
3D.
can speak maybe to both a little
Yeah,
bit.
I'm not sure I can speak to 3D actually because I've never held a 3D job, so I'm not sure. There might be
Yeah.
jobs here. There might be a lot. There might be very few. I really don't know actually when it comes to 3D animation because I've made my career based on 2D animation, and boy, I don't ever want to leave because I like the drawings so much. And I could do a whole nother talk for you about why that is. I want to right now, but I won't because it's already. I'm going to stay late for Q&A. If you guys want, I'll do it. It doesn't matter. It's fine. But the I love the drawings of animation. That's what I gravitate to. It is rough though because a lot of stuff gets sent overseas, particularly for TV animation. I think you just have to be in the right place at the right time, and then be really good at it. Like, be the kind of person people want to work with again because you did a bang up job. You made their show better for sure, and you were a nice person to work with. Both of those things are really important. And I don't know that they're guarantees, but I know that they've helped. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. And just keep growing. Just keep growing your skills, right? Like never stop learning,
Well,
whatever level
that's
you're
art,
at.
man. You're
Yeah.
never the best. You're
Yeah.
never done.
Exactly.
There is always something more, and that's again part of what makes it so cool. So
Grace said, "Hi, I love your work. I've seen your name before under a few different job titles in the credits of DuckTales,
oh
animator, character designer,
oh, did
etc."
I do that? I think I did some lip.
Maybe.
Hold on, what did I do? I think I just did some mouth charts, and that counted.
And you got that credit.
So
Nice.
I think that's how if I'm thinking back, I think I got that from
Yeah.
doing mouth charts, but really good ones.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. The question is, what was your specific role in the crew, and do you have any fun stories to share from working on the show?
Oh man. Okay. Wait, what was the first part of the question? What was my role?
What was your specific
My specific role?
for now,
Most
right?
of the time, when I wasn't doing mouth charts for one stint, most of the time I was animating. So I was an animator on the show. And I also did some technical directing work. So I'm not sure. I think my credit moved up to animator too. But basically, I was working some in pre-production. So sometimes there would be a scene, they'd look at the board or the animatic and, would call out, oh, this would be a great scene for Kat to do. And I would do that scene, rough animation of that scene. Sometimes I would do rough animation as revision. So like what you saw with the seagull shot, that was a revision or a draw over from an existing shot to take it to like, oh, there was something that wasn't quite hitting the mark, or maybe there was a rewrite or a creative change or something and they wanted to see something different. Then I would do rough animation for a scene like that. And I would also, some of those scenes I would clean up in color and, do final color fixes or do camera fixes or whatever, because I can do the technical stuff too. So they lean on me a bit for that. So a lot of everything, but mostly animation, which is great because that's really what I want to do. That's how I want to spend my time and fill my time. As I did a lot of animation for DuckTales. It was really, really fun. They gave me a lot of free reign on a lot of it, which is excellent. Fun stories. My most recent memories of DuckTales are actually all from quarantine because we had to finish that show from home, which is nuts. So I don't know if this is a fun story. This might be turning into a sad story. I'll try not to keep it. I don't want to get too dark, but this is just what's coming to mind now is, yeah, we finished out that show in quarantine, which is both amazing and too bad because the crew was really, really excellent. So we would have loved to get together in person and party together and, see the whole thing in a theater and all that. But on the flip side, the bright side, because the crew was so amazing, I can't believe how quickly we just turned it around and were able to get work from home set up and going and rolling, and everybody just went with it. And we still, we got it done. And that was really, really cool and incredible. And yeah, I just only have such nice things to say about that show. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know. That's not like
cool.
A fun, funny anecdote, that ends in a punchline or anything. But
hey, it's just you.
Yeah.
You're just doing you. That it was a cool thing what you guys did. Yeah.
It was super, super duper cool.
Let's do one more.
Okay.
From, I believe it's Reese. Apologies if I'm saying that incorrectly, but Reese, do you have any hobbies or experiences that aren't directly linked to animation but have helped you with animation?
that have, I've sought out other hobbies. Like I've done some woodworking and stuff, and I
wow.
made I'll show it to you guys. How about that? What, can I share screen again? I can show you guys this table I built.
Yeah, go
Okay,
for
I'm
it.
gonna do it. I'm gonna pull it up. So we'll find it. It's coming. Let's see.
Is this something you've done for a while, for years, or more
For a bit.
recent?
I haven't had a chance to do it recently, but I'll share it with you guys. Hey, you see this? You'll recognize what this is? That's wave action, right? But it's holding up a table. So that's a sort of an animated table, if you will.
Beautiful.
And I don't know that it taught me anything about animation, but it definitely, you know, a lot of skills I learned from animation or from other aspects came into the planning of that and making it
This is very
work
it's very
out.
tactile. You're getting,
Yeah,
you're
well, it's
doing it
neat
with
to
your
make
hands, like
something you can
sculpting.
walk around. That's different. Yeah, that's really cool. I've sought out that. I do writing. I do lots of things that aren't animation just to kind of keep all parts of my brain going, I suppose. And also because, yeah, I think at the end of the day, after I've done 8 hours, as much as I love it, I do like a change of pace because it freshens me up for the next day or for, you know, Monday or whatever, to have, yeah, just different ways of thinking about it. But they all inform the other. And it's not even that one is more important than the other, that animation is the top of the pyramid, or this, you know, like, I think it's important to keep in mind that you don't get synonymous with your job title, right? Everybody here, including me, is a complex person who has many different interests and many different, you know, potential skill sets that they're either currently working on or maybe will work on in the future or have already developed. And these can all inform the other. You can, if you're just paying attention and being observant, which is one of the best qualities a human being can have, just being observant and curious, you will notice and learn things from one and apply it to another, and then, you know, make all kinds of connections. So I don't know. I don't want to say like there's one in specific, but just being interested in everything you're doing will inform the things you want to learn from and do the most as well.
Have a good work-life balance.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I try.
Right? Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. So yeah, thanks to those who stayed here a little late to do some
Sorry, I ran
Q&A.
late,
Thanks,
guys.
Kat. Thank you, Kat. No, this is a lot of great stuff. We really appreciate it. Thank you again for your time. We hope you all got some great stuff, and take a look at the chat here as I sign everybody off, Kat. So up next is going to be our last Lightbox session from TVA. It's going to be the Amphibia Season 3 Q&A with Matt Brawley, Joe Johnston, Jessica Chandra, and Roxanne Cole. That's at 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So hope to see you there. Thanks again, everyone. We appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the expo. Take care.
Thank you for coming.
See ya.